integrity is really how you work in that gray area, right? We have a manual this thick that we got to follow by the NJCAA, and I always tell them it's written in Latin. It's hard to understand, and there's a lot of gray area, and it's how you operate in that gray area goes back to how you respect the rules, because to your point is great. It's about the spirit of the rule, not just clearly how it's written. Are we following it by the word, and are we doing things by the spirit? So that's the first one, is are we teaching our athletes to follow the rules, to follow the spirits of the rules, to understand them, and understand that that's the framework which every game, every sport that we play has to have some kind of agreed upon rules that we should all be following along. So does anybody have any thoughts? Anybody know what the next O would be?
Others.
Okay. Very true. In a way, we're talking about opponents. So you're right, Ruben. It is others. It's other people. It's the people that we compete against. What's that mean to you guys, respecting your opponents? Does it mean just like you don't want to beat them?
No, it means it means you want to beat them, and in fact, that's part of respecting them. Is that you, right. Out of respect, you give them all you got. It means that you don't trash talk, and you don't play dirty. You fight clean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
During the game too, right?
Oh yeah.
I love this.
Yeah.
I harp on this all the time, that I don't know when this happened in our society, that it's like you can do whatever you want as long as you shake hands after the game, it's okay. And I don't know where that came from, but I think a lot of it is how we interact during the game, just going up afterwards and saying, hey, good game. I don't know how meaningful that is if you haven't respected your opponents for the first 90 minutes that you played or whatever it might be. So, and I also love what you said, Ruben, about giving them your best, because it is about competing hard, right? It is about trying to beat somebody, but doing it fairly within the rules, as we talked about the first one, but absolutely trying to win, which goes back to everything we've talked about today, which this isn't just, Pollyanna and everybody feel good. We still want to teach people to win, and we want opponents that also want to beat us. That's what makes the game fun. We want to compete. So anybody have any thoughts on what the next O would be? Officials, right? Respect officials. Nobody here has ever yelled at an official, right?
No, never.
Certainly not me. I've never done that, right? Again, what's that mean to you all, to respect officials? Does it mean that you agree with every call that they make necessarily?
I think it means understanding the position that they're in. They're trying to do their best, just like the coaches are trying to do their best and make the right decisions in the game. The officials are trying to do the same thing. Very
good. Thank you. What about when you do disagree with somebody? What can you do? Right?
Well, yeah, I think there is a way to do it respectfully without yelling and screaming and ranting and raving and calling the official out in front of, hundreds or thousands of people. Having civil discussions and discourse with officials.
Right. Yeah, I think that names. Don't call them names. Yeah. Well, and I think you nailed it, Ruben. Something I think is important is how you can have that conversation with officials and not embarrass them, and sometimes do it in a manner that maybe nobody else in the ballpark or the stadium even knows what you're doing. I was taught this trick at a young age, my background coaching baseball. Instead of yelling from the dugout, going out in between innings, and you would look at the umpire and literally you'd pull out your lineup card and you'd ask the umpire to pull out his lineup card. And you would have a conversation that had nothing to do with what was on that lineup card, but nobody else in the ballpark knew what was going on. They just thought you were talking about a substitution or something like that. And the funny thing was, the officials, I think, respected the fact you didn't show them up, you didn't embarrass them. And lo and behold, they were actually a little more responsive, right? They actually, instead of just going, putting the hand up and telling us to stop, they actually would listen to what you had to say. And instead of barking. So I think there is a manner it's not that we're going to agree with every call, but it is how you respect that official. And I challenge our coaches this all the time. What would you say if you made a mistake and got a guy thrown out at home plate by 20 feet, if the official turned around and started yelling at you and saying, hey, you screwed up, right? And so part of it's just remembering they're all human. They're all going to make mistakes, just like we are as coaches. How would we want them to react to us? So very good. So officials. The T, does anybody have any thoughts on what the T is for?
The team?
Team, yep. Team or teammates. Mm-hmm. We talk about teammates. How many of you all can remember a really bad teammate? Anybody?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, you never forget them, right? You can probably also remember really good teammates too, correct? What did that mean to you all? Like, was a really good teammate just the best player?
Not necessarily.
No.
Right? Not necessarily. Sometimes it's a guy who does all the little things to help support you, help support your team. How many of y'all have ran into the person who's the best athlete actually being the worst teammate? And exactly. So how do you teach those students, those young athletes, to do that? And I think one of the things that we deal with when I deal with college students particularly, but I think it's probably at any level, is that sometimes those athletes don't even know they're being bad teammates. Sometimes people haven't addressed that with them in a calm manner of what it means to be a good teammate. And so if you're using this framework and you're introducing it to your student athletes, really one of the things you also have in terms of respecting teammates is teach them what it means to be a good teammate, to be supportive of one another, to be committed to a common goal and not be out for yourself. So very good. So what's the last one? Anybody have a thought on the last one on number 5, the S?
School.
School?
Sport.
Not quite. I didn't hear that one.
I think we said
What
the
was
same thing. Sports.
Sport. Okay. Those are all good answers, but for us, it's about ourself, right? Like it's self. It's what kind of standards are we respecting ourselves? Do we have a standard that we've set that allows us to maintain a level of behavior, no matter what the situation is? And we have to have respect for ourselves. And I think, again, talking about young athletes, teaching them how that becomes part of who they are on the field, and doing it in a manner, we'll talk about some of those tools in a minute, that is done before they get in that stressful situation, right? We've got to really bear down on our young student athletes so that they're getting into it at a young age and not waiting till there's that one moment in time where the opponent talks trash to them or the official misses a call or whatever that might be. So here's a little scenario. The opposing coach has been riding the game and it seems to be working. Now in the final moments of a close game, the official makes a horrible call against your team. So what can you do? So I want you guys to pair up, talk about that. I'll give you about 25, 30 seconds to talk about it in pairs, and then we'll kind of share out how you guys would interact, how you guys would handle this situation. We do the fake thing again?
Yeah,
Kelly?
we're going to do that.
All right. So who's got a thought on how you would handle this situation?
I think I'll go. I coach really young kids right now, different than when I coached at the college level or high school level. And I think it's really important that I actually have to show the parents that I'm not flipping out. And that's something that I started to get much better with last year, because I was staying calm and cool and collected, but the parents were flipping out. So I found that I had to, tell the girls out loud and say, hey guys, you know what? Every call's not going to go our way. And I said it extra dramatic so that the parents could hear me. But, we've got to just stay calm and stay cool and play harder on the next play. And I'd make sure my voice carried over into the bleachers. But they got the message. And if any parent was still screaming, I would go over and say, hey, would you mind, keeping it quiet? We're really trying to teach the girls to be respectful of the officials.
Right.
So that way I wasn't yelling at dad in the stands. I was kind of making it like, hey, your daughters, I'm trying to teach your daughters this. So it helped.
Right. Anybody else have some thoughts? I love that, Kelly. One of the things I think we probably all need to do better is teach our parents right? Teach our parents how we set expectations for our parents early on in a season about how we're going to handle it, so everybody is on the same page. But anybody else have thoughts on how they'd handle this particular scenario?
I'm an assistant coach for a girls water polo team and in high school age, and my head coach is pretty emotionally driven, and so I often have to be the one to calm him down. But we try to tell our girls that you don't react to the officials no matter what, and if there's something happening, we as the coaches will take care of you and make sure that, you know, as long as you're safe in the game, then that's fine. But it's a hard thing because you feel very connected to what's going on and you feel mad at the bad call, but you have to kind of keep it together because you want to show the girls that this is life and it's a hard pill to swallow, but you talk through it after the game, explain what happened a little bit, and you just continue to do what you're doing into the next game.
Right. Well, and one of the things too, I think, is especially when you're talking about the bad calls, that, you know, when you're talking to your athletes, making them understand that it's not going to change it, right? I mean, most of us aren't coaching someplace like the NFL where they have instant replay where they're going to go look at the cameras. I mean, those officials are relatively secure in that decision they're made. They're not going to go back and change it. We've got to teach our kids, just like we talked about with a routine to get rid of mistakes. We got to teach them a routine to move forward when a call goes against you. So very good. Well, thanks for sharing that. So really the honoring the game toolkit is what we talk about, how we handle this, the double go coach moment of truth, right? And it's what I talked about a little bit even with our players, of those moments where you're going to have something go against you, how you're going to handle that and how you're going to handle it with your athletes. So there's a couple things, modeling and teaching, honoring the game. I think this is so important. Probably any coach can't do enough of this. But one of the most important things you can do is introduce this to people early on and not, as I mentioned, not wait until you're in a moment of high stress, high anxiety. Anybody have any ideas on how you could do that? Anybody have a team manager that has to ref inter squads in practice or anything like that?
I was just going to say, I think having that role reversal is always a good idea. Having them switch places, letting the kids get involved with officiating, even to a certain extent, having the parents do it when
nice.
They might. That's something I've seen be very successful with some of our partners here. So yeah, absolutely, having that. Take them out of their comfort zone for a practice.
Yeah. Sometimes it's fun just to show them how hard it is, right? Like, they start to realize these people are human too. They make mistakes. You know, one of the things that we used to do all the time when I said, do you have a manager that referees and practices, there was days that I would tell our manager that if it was a somewhat close call to make sure he blew it. We would have inter squads, like fall inter squads, and I wanted them to learn how to react in those situations because, you know, we don't give, I think, young athletes an opportunity, a place where they can practice this and where sometimes they can fail at this and then have that teachable moment. Sometimes we got to create those teachable moments early on in practice so that when they do get into a game in a high anxiety, high stress situation, they're able to react. The second one is a self-control routine. Anybody got an idea of what a self-control routine would be? Anybody have one?
I usually have a water bottle with me. So if I feel myself getting a little bit upset, I'll just, take a long drink of the water bottle.
Okay, nice. That's kind of your reset button then?
It is for me. I used to just take a deep breath, and then the girls started realizing that when Coach K was breathing really heavy, it meant I was stressed out. So I don't do that anymore. Now I just take a drink.
Right. Who else? Does anybody else have one that they use routinely? Maggie, you hit on something I wanted to go back to a minute ago. You talked about the head coach that you work with. I probably resembled your head coach that you worked with for a long time in my coaching career, where I was very emotional. And so one of the things that we always did, I had a pitching coach who was the exact opposite of me. And And I knew that sometimes I needed help with a self-control routine. And so literally we would be sitting in the dugout and he could sense, kind of like what Kelly's talking about, my breathing would get a little heavier, my face would get a little red. And it was as simple as him, he would start snapping his fingers. And I knew exactly what he meant. It was his way of getting my attention. I would look at him and that was it. Like, it took my mind out of that a little bit so that I could refocus again on that game. So sometimes having a self-control routine is knowing who you are, having some self-awareness, and depending on other people that you might be coaching with, having that conversation ahead of time of, hey, this is something that I need some help with. If you see me getting out of hand, then please try to give me a cue, give me some type of cue that'll kind of reset my memory. So sometimes it's not just all about us. It's depending on our coaching staff, depending on where you're at, or a parent or whatever you might have available to you. The third one is narrated modeling. And I love this one because I think this just goes really to communication and being very clear with our young athletes about what this means to respect officials, respect teammates. What too often we behave in a certain way, but we forget to make sure they completely understand why we're doing that, right? And Kelly hit on one of those things earlier about talking, in some ways, narrated modeling to the parents in the stands via the kids on the bench. But in some way, we've got to make sure that they understand, hey, it's not that we didn't realize that was a bad call, or it's not that we didn't realize that the other team is talking trash or that they broke the rules, but being very clear about how they should interpret your behavior and not leaving that to chance. I think sometimes we leave that to chance. So really what we're trying to do here is create a team culture, the importance of culture creation and a culture of honoring the game and integrity. And, culture is one of my favorite words, along with about everybody else's. For those that don't know, it was like the 2014 word of the year, right? And so really how we define culture at the PCA is the way we do things here. And I think there's an important word sometimes that gets glossed over in there. Anybody have a thoughts on what might be the most important word in there?
Here
is part of it. I think do, right? I think do is important. Like it's how we do things. It's not how we talk about doing things. It's how we actually do them, I think we talk a lot about culture, even in the business world, in any environment. It's not just about words that you put on a wall or put on the back of a t-shirt. It's about how you act and how you behave. And the importance of that is significant. And as leaders, as coaches, we all control that. We got to fight for that culture every day. We've got to not leave that to chance, because any team that you've been on, any group that you've worked with, any employer, there is a culture, right? It's either gonna be manifested by other people, or we can control it and fight for that every day and create that culture. So here is Julie Foudy, one of our PCA advisory board members, and she's going to talk about the importance of culture. Do you want me to skip through that?
Yep, you can just go right through.
Okay. And so I tried to skip through it. There we go. So that brings us to the end of our 3 takeaways.
All right. Well done. Right? I know you are like the timing king. You're like right on the money with the time. Funny. I love it. All right. So how'd you feel running through that?
Practice plans in my life, Kelly.
That's good. I like it. I wish everybody was that way. How did you feel doing that section?
I like that one. That's in my sweet spot a little bit. So I love talking about culture, and I just think so highly that's so important about what we teach our young athletes. Because I think this is only my opinion, but I think that's one of these things in here that if we can teach athletes to do it, they actually are in complete control of their ability to understand it. There is no bad hop ground ball that they're not sure how to react to, right? Like, things like that. So,
yeah.
So I felt okay.
Good. Oh, that was great. All right. Well, since everybody else has, this is probably their first time seeing you, I'd love to hear from them. I'd love to hear everybody. If you were a coach in Kevin's workshop, what did you really like? Maybe like first impressions. And then if you have one suggestion for when he goes out live in front of real coaches, something that can translate over to that, what would you suggest as an opportunity for him to work on? So I'm going to start with Joe.
So overall, it was fantastic. Your presentation, your demeanor, I think your approachability, and the sense that you're actually having a conversation with us where we're collaborating, I think are all real strong. And then I think you nailed that. The one thing I would consider, I'm not going to say changing, but thinking about, and this kind of comes back to my days of working with teachers. If Kelly knows what I'm going to say right now, by the way, I'm a pretty big non-fan of asking somebody to guess something that the answer is going to come up on the screen.
Okay.
Because you're essentially asking for the first 5 people to be told they're wrong.
Oh, nice. Yep.
And so, I don't do that. I've seen other people use it somewhat effectively. It's just personal. It's a personal preference.
Sure.
So I'm not saying not to do it. Think through how it feels for you in the workshop and what's working. My guess is what you're going to be really good at in the first place is going to be reading people's tone and reaction so that you'll adjust things on the fly. But just something to keep in mind.
No, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That was a little weird because we got to, I think it was the one of the T or the
Yeah.
S, and, like we had a couple wrong answers there. It was kind of like,
And I think we were purposely giving you wrong answers because
Yeah,
we've seen enough people do it.
We lead you down a funny road with that because we actually essentially ask you to do it in the way the deck is presented at the 5-to-1 point,
Mm-hmm.
where we say, "No, hey, guess how many." I'm not a big fan of guess the word, guess how many.
gotcha.
Because I wouldn't let my teachers do it in the classroom. I guess is part of my bias on that.
Right. No, I
Thanks,
like that.
Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Keenan?
Yeah, Kevin, first of all, you could tell that you were super prepared for this and that you put a lot of time and effort into getting ready for this. So one thing that resonated with me that I've never heard before, and I'm probably going to steal, is how would you feel if the umpire yelled at you for making a bad coaching decision?
I caught that too. I love it.
I've never really heard it contextualized like that. And as somebody who's officiated a lot of baseball and softball games, I might try that. Yeah, see if I can get into it with a third base coach. The other thing that, I think really makes the difference between a good trainer and a great trainer is being able to pull from personal experience, which you did very, very well. That's really what defines a trainer is, can you take what's on the PowerPoint and translate it into a real life experience that these coaches can resonate with? Obviously, you have a great coaching background. You're really big into culture. As a matter of fact, this is going to blow your mind, but I actually borrowed one of the things that you used to do at Rock Valley and you told Jason and I about was the briefcase.
Yeah.
You guys used to have the briefcase. And I tell that story all the time. When people say what this looks like in action, I talk about the briefcase. That always resonated with me, and continue to pull from that because that's what's going to make you a great trainer. So really nice. And you weren't married to the PowerPoint. That's another thing that, a lot of new trainers can get caught up with. And I could tell that, you knew about it and you used a crutch when you needed to, but, it wasn't just reading, line for line. I'm kind of along the lines with Joe. That was going to be my criticism as well, was that, I think that let's take some of the guesswork out of it, and dive deeper into, the examples of what it looks like. Cause I think we can get caught up wasting a little bit of time there. Overall, Kevin, I'm really excited to have you as part of our training staff in Chicago. That was excellent work. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Keenan. All right,
Yep.
Maggie?
Keenan totally stole what I was going to say, but that's okay. I thought you did a great job. You were very relatable, very comfortable, even in this kind of awkward video situation. You did a really good job of just showing your experience right away. I liked all of the personal stories that you had. I think you have a lot more of those that you can share depending on your audience. And
Sure.
I also liked how you kind of had a conversation with us where you referenced back to something that we said before and then applied it to an experience you had and tied it all into the topic that we were discussing. Also agree with Keenan on the PowerPoint. It's really hard to pay attention to someone talking when they're constantly looking back at the PowerPoint. It's very distracting. And I think you did a great job of having that visual aid behind you, but not, it just shows how prepared you are, which is very important.
Thank you.
All right, Ruben, anything to add?
Yeah. Just a couple quick things to add because you've gotten some great feedback already, Kevin. I think one of your many strengths is your not only your understanding of the principles, tools, and nuances of this workshop, but your ability to explain them crisply and clearly, not overtalk something. I just think it's very solid. My one suggestion for you to think about is when you ask for us to give input, to wait a little longer before you prompt us again.
Okay.
You didn't give up. You didn't give up when we didn't respond right away. You also, there were a couple times I wanted to jump in and I just didn't have enough time to unmute. And in a live workshop, I think you just wait a little longer, allow for some silence, and then if necessary, ask again. You give that follow-up prompt.
Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
along those lines too. I think silence is okay at a workshop.
Yeah.
Secondly, I've seen a couple trainers, which I've stolen and used, where they say, just think about this for a couple seconds first. And they actually tell them to be silent. Just think about how you would handle this. And then say, would anyone like to share? That way they know that they have time to think. Because sometimes I do that at a workshop. You'll ask a question and I'm thinking of an answer and then 3 people have already answered. So Kevin, I thought it was just as strong as last time, if not stronger. I can feel what you'd be like in a real workshop, and that's exciting for me because I can see it. Your transitions were excellent. I think one of the best assets that you have is to be able to circle back with people that gave answers. You're a great listener, and so when something came up 10 minutes later, you were like, "Oh yeah, Maggie, when you said this," or "Kelly, you mentioned that," and that's great because that's making people in the room feel like, "Wow, this guy's in this and he's listening to it." Modeling, and 10 minutes later, you didn't actually use the term, which was cool. And then later you're like, that's what she was talking about with narrated modeling. So I thought that was great. 2 suggestions I have is the S in self is really important. And I think you went real quick through that.
Okay.
I think sometimes that's sort of ambiguous. People don't really know what you mean by respecting yourself. And I think your pace is so strong that you could actually slow it down a little bit and get people to think a little bit more about what does that mean, self-respect? Because I think of all the qualities of young athletes, self-respect is one that is a little bit tougher to teach.
Right.
So I would just spend a little bit more time on that. And the very end, when you said, I think you were talking to Maggie and you said, I was a very emotional coach. I'd love to hear that in the beginning because you do come off so confident and like you've been doing this the right way your whole life and you've been this awesome coach. And maybe you probably say that, before honoring the game, before you get to that. Mm-hmm. But I think even with this principle specifically, it would be really cool for the coaches to know, like, you have messed up. You were the emotional coach. You were screaming. It just helps connect people and go, wow, this guy's for real.
Right.
So that's my only suggestion. Other than that, I'm excited to get you out there.
Okay. Well, it's funny you said because Keenan, that's a true story. If you ever want to use this, I had an umpire, believe it or not, sitting next to me having a beer. Right. And he looked at me and he goes, I have a question for you. And I said, what's that? He goes, how come when you get a guy thrown out at home plate, I don't get to yell at you, but when I kick one, you get to yell at me? And I said, as crazy as it sounds, like I referenced back to that thought, and I was probably 26 years old, and it completely changed the way I dealt with umpires. Like nobody had ever explained it to me like that. So it's funny how that stuff happened. But that was me. I was that guy that yelled and screamed at every call because I thought it was the 7th game of the World Series or something. I don't know. But
yeah, next game I umpire, I'm going to call time and reposition some infielders.
I love it.
Great story.
Yeah,
I love it.
So,
well,
awesome.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Happy holidays to you.
Kevin.
You too. Have a Merry Christmas.
All right.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, so we're translating to New England, from Chicago to New England. We're doing the American tour here. Hi, James. How are you?
How's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm good. Merry Christmas.
You too. You too. So, James, we have Chris Fay. I don't know if you've met.
I know Chris. We've met several times.
All right. Awesome. And then Jessica just joined us. I don't know if she can see us, but she is, Jessica's actually going to go after you. She's from Tampa. So she's gonna,
cool.
She's going to sit in on yours because she's going to do her first demo after yours.
Good luck, Jess.
Yeah. And then
you're tough.
We're not that tough. And then Joe and Ruben. Have you met Joe and Ruben already?
I have. I've had the privilege of meeting both.
Excellent. Okay. Question for you. Do you want me to pull up the PowerPoint for you?
No, I have it on my other screen.
Perfect. All right. So this is your second demo. What are you going to be doing today?
I am going to be doing principle number 2,
Excellent.
the Elm Tree of Mastery.
All right. Does anyone here need me to pull up the PowerPoint, or are you guys all good?
I think everybody there probably has it memorized.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. Sometimes I don't. We try to challenge ourselves sometimes when they say, "Oh, read the quote," and we're like, "Who? Do we know that quote?" Sometimes we do. Sometimes we do.
Kelly,
all right.
Kelly,
Yeah.
I wonder if Jessica might benefit and appreciate the PowerPoint.
Oh, maybe.
I don't know if maybe not.
Jessica, are you there? I'm not sure.
All right,
We'll just go. If she jumps in, I can always put it back on. I have my 2 computers set up, so I can do it. All right, James, while you have a lively group of 5, you can make us a group of 30 if you'd like to. But
awesome. So just before I start, do I start like as I'm already within the presentation, or?
Yeah, well, if you want to just introduce,
know who I am?
Yeah, it's great to introduce yourself real quick, and then you could say, we're going to jump into the second principle.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, that's.
So I wanted to know where to start from.
Yep,
So
great.
just to introduce myself real quick, my name is James Winnell. I am the Director of Athletics for the Saugus Public School District in Massachusetts. I've been a former coach, both in soccer and in basketball. I'm still a coach with little kid soccer, the little amoebas, the shapes that move around. And I am a trainer for Positive Coaching Alliance. I can't say enough about what we preach, because it's something that was lacking for a long time, and the benefits you guys will see at the end of this course. So we're going to jump into principle number 2, the Elm Tree of Mastery. Before I knew about the Elm Tree of Mastery, I was more of a bonsai tree type of guy. And learning about the elm tree, I've switched over to appreciating a whole new level of trees. So as we get into this, the Elm Tree of Mastery, one of the things that we always have to think about as coaches is, especially in dealing with the Elm Tree of Mastery, what do you think that kids that participate in sports fear the most when they participate, when they perform in a game? Anyone?
Messing up.
Messing up? Yeah. Anyone else?
Not being good enough.
Not being good enough? Absolutely. Not being good enough, messing up, disappointing. I know my biggest fear when I was younger, I didn't want to let my father down. I thought that winning was everything. And, when I was younger, I didn't really get the message, but as I grew up and he talked to me more and coached me more, winning isn't everything. It is something, but there's more to it. And, that's where I had that scoreboard mentality. And we're going to talk about that scoreboard mentality right now and compare it to the Elm Tree mentality and which one favors athletes getting better. So when we talk about the scoreboard definition, when you look up that scoreboard at the end of the game, you see results. Whether that's a win, lose, or draw, you're seeing that final score. With the mastery definition, we're not looking at that final score. We're looking at the effort that was put into that game. And that's something that's huge as a coach and as a player. When you can coach to effort, you're going to maximize what these kids can bring to the table, as opposed to focusing on, well, we're down by 30 or we need to score more points. We might need to do that, but there's a lot of things that can go into us reaching that. The next piece, if you lose or if you win, when you look at that scoreboard, probably the worst thing, and it's not just in sports, when you look around every day, people compare themselves to others. Well, that person had 40 points. That person scored 6 goals. I didn't score any. And when you start comparing yourself to others, it's just set up. That mindset is there that, it's really not built up to be successful. You're kind of already looking at it from a negative frame. Whereas, if you focus on what did I learn? What did I get out of that loss? Or what did I get out of that play? We're you can get something positive out of everything that happens in a game, whether you win or lose. And when we switch that mentality to focusing on that, the results, again, they're going to keep coming from these kids. The next thing, you know, when you lose a game, you can go back and say, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, or we should have ran this, or we should have ran that. And you're constantly having that mindset if you're going to be second guessing yourself. And again, that looking at it through that frame, you're looking at it through a frame of, in a sense, negativity. You know, when we go over to the other side and look at it from the elm tree, mistakes are all right. You know, mistakes are going to happen. No one in this world is perfect. You know, and officials, players, coaches, parents, we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. That is absolutely okay. In my job, I have to have conversations with parents, with athletes all the time about mistakes. You know, recently, one of the biggest conversations that I have is students violating a chemical health policy. You know, and they've made a mistake. And I don't think of these kids as a bad kid, and that's a conversation that I have to have with a parent. Well, my kid's never done anything like this before. That's okay. You know, your son, daughter made a poor decision. I don't think of your son or daughter as a bad kid. They made a poor choice. They made a mistake. Now it's my job to help them learn from that mistake. And as a coach, when you have that mindset, yeah, all right, we made a mistake. Now let's move on from that mistake and correct it so it doesn't happen again. So the Elm Tree of Mastery is based upon research. Like they did like 2 studies, you know, over like 6 months. It was not a lot. Actually, the research has been over 25 years. There's a professor at Stanford that did over 25 years of research. I believe his name is Rodford Rozier. I don't know if I pronounced it right. Did I pronounce it right?
Robert Rozier.
Rozier.
Oh, that's okay.
It's close. Let's call him Robert R. Bob.
There you go.
Bob R. He did a lot of research based upon kids being successful in showing effort and getting support and in that encouragement and building that environment. I was just sat in a workshop where they talked about the culture. You know, when you create that culture, a positive team culture, the environment is already established for these things to be successful. And, you know, when you start recognizing the effort and what these kids are actually putting into it and what they're learning, and one of probably the biggest things is that their confidence is going to go up. And when you see a room around with confident people, whether it's in practice or a game, you're going to get more out of them because they walk with a little bit of swagger, and you want that. You want that them to have that edge, because knowing when they're going into the battle, that game, that on the field or on the court or on the rink, you know, and they know it's all right, that my coach has got my back. My coach knows that I'm giving everything I have. And if I make a mistake, it's all right. He knows that I'm putting that effort in to do my best. And in that culture, that's the culture that you want to create. So with that mastery climate, when anxiety goes down, that self-confidence blooms and it goes up. And that's what you want. And that's not only in sports, that's just in life. You know, the more you can encourage and support people, you are going to get that culture, that great environment for people to thrive. So the Elm Tree of Mastery. Mastery gives players a feeling of control. That's probably the biggest takeaway that we want to get from this. When people feel in control, they have a better sense of how they want to go about doing things. And when we talk about that, you know, that confidence blooms, and you're going to get kids to work harder, and they tend to stay with it a lot longer. You know, when you hear coaches say that study shows that kids leave sports after the age of 13 or after the age of 10, they don't want to participate anymore. To me, someone who's loved sports my entire life and my job is based around sports, that's probably the worst thing that I can hear, because sports brings so much to the table that whether you're a superstar or just starting out, there's a place for you. And I want those kids to be involved in as much as possible. That's my goal for my everyday job and passing my information and knowledge along to everyone in this room, you know, ultimately as coaches, we have a very big say in how these kids feel. And you know, it's not always what you say or how you say it, but it's that feeling that you leave that kid with that they're gonna remember. You know, and that's the big piece. You know, when we go and take on, let's say, student shooting foul shots, an athlete shooting foul shots, and he's terrible. You know, it probably can emanate me. I was Mr. Shaquille O'Neal when I was younger. I could probably make 1 for 10. Foul shots were not my thing, and you know, after missing a foul shot, I would often get down, discouraged, shake my head, and you know, as a coach, when you see that, what might you be able to do to help change that mindset? Anyone?
Develop a mistake ritual for them.
Mistake ritual. What do you think of, what is a mistake ritual, if you want to share that with everybody else, Chris?
Well, it's a physical action rather than just telling them to forget about it or let's move on. It's something tangible or something physically they do to let them know that we're on to the next play, such as no sweat, wiping your eyebrow, or you know, taking that deep belly breath, whatever it may be, to signify that play is over. Let's move on.
Yeah. Anyone else have done something or implemented something like that? As soon as you said take that deep belly breath, I'm going to revert to my my 7 and 3-year-old daughters with Elmo. When they get upset, Elmo teaches them to belly breathe. And that's the first thing that automatically popped in my head, because even as coaching soccer, my oldest daughter, 7, you know, when she gets frustrated, I go, "What would Elmo do?" She goes, "Belly breathe." And I said, "All right, we need to take a belly breathe." So I'm not suggesting that's probably the best thing to do with maybe high school athletes. They might get a kick out of that. But you know, as soon as you said that, Chris, that just hit a chord with me, because you're right. You know, sometimes taking that step back, taking that breath, that's what people need just to get recentered and refocused. And doing that, yeah, it's like you said, no sweat. We move on. As we continue, so basically we're given a scenario, and this scenario is probably, I would say, 99% true, because I've seen it not only with teams that I've coached, that I've been in charge of, but at other schools. Your team tends to play tentatively and lets opponents drive and dictate the action of what's going on in the game. I would like you guys to split up into groups, person next to you, behind you, in front of you, someone that you haven't talked to yet, and come up with some ideas as to what you can do so that doesn't happen, or we can kind of change so your team isn't playing tentative. Take a couple minutes.
Okay.
And good. That was good. So as your groups discuss, would anyone like to share their ideas as to what they may do or have done to handle this type of situation?
We were just talking about, we coach high school basketball, and we were just talking about how a lot of times the girls just don't have confidence. Maybe they're getting beat halfway through the game. The kids have a lot of confidence in the beginning, and then when they start losing, they lose their confidence, and then the other team's more aggressive. So I think just having them think about all the things they've done well so far, and just reiterate, you know, you guys are really playing defense well, or, you know, something in the game, whatever it is, that doesn't have to do with the score, that you can just reinforce that they're doing really well.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else want to share from their group discussion?
Set an effort goal or effort expectation for that second half, moving forward, and making sure that they're not playing the game with their fear and mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as I want to bounce off of Kelly in basketball, I had the fortunate experience, my girls basketball team, they're very good. And they were playing a school the other day, and the coach came into my office, and she was running behind the varsity coaches. She said, "Would you mind printing something off that I sent you?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." And she had to go coach the game, and I printed it. Well, I pulled up the email, and I noticed that it was a John Wooden quote, and there was 16 of them, same quote, just over and over again. So all she did was ask me to print it. Seeing 16 of the same thing, I was like, oh, all right. She obviously wants to hand these out to the girls, so I'm going to cut them up and give them to her. So I walked in the gym, cut them up, give them to her. And after the game, she came in and thanked me, and she said, you know, I didn't expect you to do all that. And I said, that's the easy part. I said, I'm just here, so that no problem helping you out. And I said, I'm just curious. I said, what did you do with those quotes? And she said, well, we have a ritual. My team's not very good. We're learning, we're growing. I've only been here 2 years, so I'm changing the culture, and I'm trying to change that culture into a positive culture. I said, wow. I said, you said, what, do you see the books in my room? I said, you know, I said, that's awesome. And I said, well, what do you do with the quotes? And she's like, each game, before the game and at halftime, I like to give them a quote, something to keep them motivated, that realizing that, yeah, we might be down or times might be tough, but let's focus on what we can control to meet one of our goals that we've set up at the beginning of the season. And I said, just to let you know, I said, from an athletic director standpoint, I said, that's just great. I said, for you to have that knowledge and command and know what you want to get from your girls, I said, that's a very good coaching tool. And I said, you should be very proud, because you are going to get a lot from those girls. It might not happen overnight, but that's something that's huge. And she thanked me, and I just thought, you know, that was one of those great things, because that's someone who gets it. And I wish more coaches were like that, because, you know, you're seeing what a positive impact can do, because you're focusing on the effort, the learning, knowing that mistakes are okay, as opposed to just focusing on that result at the end of the game. Now, as we continue to talk about effort, you know, this is the hugest. This is one of the biggest things that goes into sport. You know, you don't have to be good to put effort into it. And when I said earlier that, you know, I want everybody to participate, anybody can work hard. You just have to put that effort into it. And when I was coaching, talent is awesome. You know, I don't get me wrong. I'd love to coach an all-star team, but in a sense, when I talk to coaches, you know, when you have a group of talented players that you can just throw out there, you're not really a coach, you're more of a manager, because they know what they're doing. You know, coaching, there's a little more that goes into it. And when you're coaching and focusing on these things, effort and learning, and knowing that mistakes are all right, you know, that's special. Teaching those tools and techniques to these kids, that's going to help them not only in what they're doing now, but later on in life. And not only the effort, and it was mentioned, I believe, Kelly, you had said it, I forgot exactly the word, but you had said during the basketball game, when a kid made a mistake, you commented them, but you were specific about that comment. And I think when you're addressing effort, that's huge. You know, anybody can say, good job, nice work. And that's great. Yes, there is encouragement there, but as a coach and just as a human being, when you could say, don't worry about that, set your feet better, tuck your elbow in, or, you know, shake it off. There's little adjustments that we can make. When you're a little more specific, both in a game and after a game, kids know that, and kids feel that. And when they feel that that person cares about them and that they're paying attention, you're going to get more out of them. And those minor details, not only are going to help those kids, but help you as a coach become a better coach. Because you're paying attention to, all right, well, maybe my goal for this game can be boxing out the right way, or making sure we set a right pick, or making sure we're not going off sides, or, you know, all our kills in volleyball we're not hitting the net. You know, there are so many little things that we can tweak and help address based on effort. And none of it has to do with how many points we get. And the more and more we do that, the more and more of that culture, that confidence, all those things grow. And not only are we complimenting the good efforts, you know, if someone is trying and they make a mistake, that's okay. We got to compliment them on that too. That's what helps them get that confidence, get that swagger to be a better athlete, to grow and thrive. You know what? I made a mistake, but I'm going to get it next time. That's the mindset that we want to instill in these athletes. That, yeah, all right, no problem. Made a mistake, not going to shake my head. I'm going to flush it away, and I'm going to get it. And one of our Positive Coaching Alliance spokesperson, Curtis Grandyman Granderson from the New York Mets, formerly of the New York Yankees, and formerly of like 4 other teams. He's going to talk about the flush it ritual mistake, and this is not time for a bathroom break kind of flush it ritual. Where we're going to see how he talks about moving on after a mistake. And the video is shown.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of great things. Everybody loves it. And earlier, Chris had mentioned about making a mistake ritual, something to help people move on. And the most important thing out of any mistake ritual is we need to be concerned about the next play, not dwell on the last play. When I coach, and I hear it from coaches all the time, the more and more that we focus on the past, the less control we have over the future. And if we pay attention to what we can do better going forward, that's where that effort grows, that confidence grows, and we get a better outcome. And, you know, just continuing on our coaching model, we've talked about emotional tanks. Now we've wrapped up with the Elm Tree of Mastery, and we're moving on to principle number 3, which is honoring the game.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. How'd you feel going through that principle?
Good. I felt different than the first time I presented. I did feel a little bit better. I wanted to, you know, on the notes, you know, Ruben was brutal when he first hammered me. You know, I wanted to make sure that, you know, the information, remember that the information is on the slides. I wanted to make sure that I touched on my own experiences, gather information from the crowd, but also keep things moving and not constantly reciting what people already know and see.
Okay. So that was his suggestion the last time? That was his brutal suggestion?
Yeah, it was. I cried. It was tough. I hid in a corner. I was very emotional about it. So Jess, you got a lot that I'm telling you, there's really tough. But no, honestly, I tried to take what both you and Ruben suggested and in this presentation, make sure that I was on pace, on point, but at the same time, you know, taking what people said, sharing my own experiences and making sure I get the point across. And I think I did that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. So Chris and Joe, I don't know if Joe has seen you before, but Chris, I'd love to hear first impression of James. If you were at a workshop, what did you like about what he did? What did you connect with? And then what is the suggestion or two that you have moving forward with him?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, James. Nice job. And congrats on a great fall season. I saw in the paper you're a soccer player. You're all state.
Oh yeah, he's tremendous. All scholastic. Yeah, great kid.
Congrats. No, one of the things. So I recently did a workshop. I did 2 workshops back to back, and I thought one went really, really well, and the other it didn't feel like it connected. And it was the same exact workshop. And the first workshop, I felt like I didn't talk as much. You know, I got the involvement of other people. And I almost found the more I was talking, I probably was losing their attention. So really including people, asking them those open-ended questions, getting them involved is critical. And one thing to always think about is you want to make it a dialogue, all right, and not a monologue throughout the time. And then the second part, and after our workshops, we get back surveys, and every time I get a survey back, the thing that people say is, I either love your stories or I want more stories, or they remember stories. So while the definitions are great, people remember stories more so than even the definition. So especially with your great background and experience, coming up with every single principle and every part of Elm, a story that people can relate to and I think they'll absorb it even more.
Cool.
That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know it's tough, especially early on, where you feel like you're the presenter, you're there, you should be the one doing all the talking. And I think that was probably the trap I fell into early on. But really, how can we make it a discussion is an important element. But nice job.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Chris. Joe?
Yeah, I would echo what Chris said. First of all, though, I think you have gained a real strong control of the content. I actually think you know it better than you think you do. I think you're more concerned about the content than I am. If I had one suggestion, I would say, and it's probably something just to do on your own, or if you wanted to do it with me or Kelly, that would be fine too. I would love to see you go through this entire principle without using PowerPoint. Just don't use it. Just throw it out. And right now, here's my brutal part. And I'm way meaner than Ruben. Just ask anybody. It's just a fact. You're being led by the slides right now, and they're pulling you through rather, or feels that way. They're pulling you through rather than being. They're not an aid for you. They're an aid for your participants. And that was a tricky concept for me to get my head around too. So I think you'd actually have a much stronger Elm component if you just stood up and did it. And as Chris said, relate, discuss, converse, and use those great stories, because the personality that I saw in you when we had dinner, I didn't see come through in this. And that was what I was missing, because I think you're going to be a rock star trainer. I really do. When you're just going to need to let yourself be.
Cool. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. It's good advice. Ruben? Brutal Ruben.
Brutal Ruben.
I don't think I've ever heard that used to describe you before.
Okay. Talk about stories. Okay. Stories. My first year as a head coach at Stanford, I take over this team, and we get off to a good start, and then we tank, and we just go downhill, and we didn't train hard, and I didn't hold the players accountable enough. And so at the start of the second season, I said, guys, I feel like I let you down last year. I've got to be tougher on you. I got to hold you more accountable. I got to crack the whip. And these are Stanford guys, right? And so they nicknamed me Rubes Pierre. And for those of you who aren't history buffs, because I go, Rubes Pierre, what's that all about? And they go, don't you know who Robespierre is? And I said, well, that was history or France or something. They go, yeah, Robespierre and the Reign of Terror. So it had to do with French history and stuff, and this guy who took over France and the Reign of Terror. So Kelly, so I couldn't help but jump in with that story.
Yeah, there's your new nickname.
I've got it in me somewhere. So hey, but I'm not gonna say much here other than that.
You should never have admitted that, by the way. You just talked about a mistake ritual. That was a bad idea, my friend.
So I guess when we talk about stories, I don't know. There may be a place for that story sometime in a workshop. I don't know. Maybe there will be. Maybe there won't. But I had to jump in and out, and I apologize. So the only other thing I'll say is right off the bat, I noticed when you emphasized we, it was clear that you've absorbed that you are PCA is you, and you talk we, and I thought for the little parts that I was able to observe, I thought your poise and your presence, your command was even stronger than the first time. So, and some of the things that have been suggested, I think you're already on that path, based on what I experienced with you in the first demo and what I saw today.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Ruben. All right. Now I get to be the brutal one. Great. Jane, but I definitely saw an improvement. There was much more of an improvement on pace and your focus. I think last time you were a little bit too married to the PowerPoint and maybe a little bit more scattered in your thoughts. And I thought you were much, much better with that. So kudos to you. I think your preparation was better. A couple tips that I have, and these are things that people have said to me, so I'm just relaying it to you because I think it's good advice. Don't name drop if you don't know the name. Important because, you know, if you're going to talk about this great research, make sure you know exactly who said it, when they said it, and when the study was.
It was more I didn't know how to pronounce it then.
Right. No, I think that's okay. But I think, you know,
but that would include Curtis Granderson too, and getting the team wrong. No, I'm not. I know that's brutal, but what teams does he play for now?
The Mets.
You sure?
Unless he got traded.
I'm just saying. I'm just echoing what Kelly was saying. So just be careful with those because people will ding you on them in workshops.
So on the PowerPoint, so then when you get the PowerPoint, is it updated? Because that's what I based it off of. Was the Mets? Just like Herm Edwards, when I did the PowerPoint the first time, he's an ESPN analyst.
James, you're making a very good point. We need to update that slide because Curtis Granderson got traded to the Dodgers last year. And the slide is incorrect. So you're making a very good point.
Yeah.
And Joe, it's interesting to me that you just asked James a question that he might not know the answer to. And it's just interesting to me because
That's a great point. No, it's a fantastic point. It's what I say. But good point. Fair. Good on you.
Yeah,
let's move forward. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the one because I just don't think it's necessary to name drop unless you've got the names and the years and the dates. The other thing that you did also, and I've done this too. What if I was sitting in the audience or one of the coaches and I had no idea who John Wooden was? So that was a great story. John Wooden was, and you actually didn't tell me what the quote was. So you had this great story about printing these quotes, and I'm sitting there going, well, who's John Wooden? I don't know who this guy is. And you're like, yeah, and we had this great quote, and we printed it 16 times. I think the whole story was kind of flat if I didn't know what the quote was. I was sitting here chomping at the bit, like, give me his fantastic quote. So in terms of storytelling, I think Chris is right. That's how you connect. You've got a lot of great stories. Make sure they're strong stories, they're crisp stories, and leave out like the extraneous details. Sometimes when you tell a story to a big group, it's different than if you're talking to me, just one-on-one, like, oh my gosh, and then this lady walked in, and then this is what she looked like, and this is what she, like, some of those are just little details that the whole group will get lost on.
Okay.
We would almost say, like, under our breath, if I were just talking to you to set the scene, whereas you're talking to a group of 50 coaches, the story has to be, emotional, strong, and all the details have to be right. So it's just a skill of storytelling.
Gotcha.
That is helpful. But yeah, definitely. Tell us the quote. And
I'm assuming that everybody knows who John Wooden is when they're a coach.
Yeah, you know what happens when you assume. No, I think that's a big thing in sports because you might have a whole room of water polo coaches and some of them may not know. And, I am guilty as charged as being the worst sports encyclopedia ever. I know names. I have no clue who played for the Dodgers in 1995. Like, I'm horrible at that. PCA events and people are quoting people left and right. I'm like, I should just have a sign on my forehead that says idiot. I have no idea who any of these people are. So, but I think it's something that I point out a lot at workshops because a lot of sports people in this business will name drop like this. And if I don't know the sport and I don't know who it is, your story means nothing to me. So just be careful about that. Now, I'm going to push back slightly on what Joe said because I think it's great to use the PowerPoint as a guide. I do think the PowerPoint was pushing you a little bit more than I want you. I don't know if you were on for Kevin's, the end of Kevin's, but Kevin does a fantastic job at leading into this is what's coming up next on the slide. He almost like sets it up before the slide's even shown. Yeah. That's really how we want it to go, so you know what's next. I don't think that when you got to the toolkit for the elm tree, I think that's almost a place where you do kind of need to come back to the slide because that's where the structure is. Those are where the tools are. And I would like to see you also mention the book because you're giving the partner a book. And in the book are those tools. So on the slide that says Elm Tree Toolkit, and I can pull it up if you're not sure which one I'm talking about. I have it up. You've got the page numbers. You've got the tools written out pretty clearly. Sure that you at least let them know that on these pages, here you can see it if you want to pull it up.
Highlight it. Yeah, toolkit, become a
noticer. Because the coaches want to walk away from the workshop saying, okay, here was my issue. My kids aren't motivated. They're beating themselves up out of mistakes. This is what the Elm Tree problem is, the culture of mastery. They're scoreboard focused. I want to know when I leave this workshop better. And so by giving them a place to find the resources and pulling out those specific resources, little picky thing, you said ritual mistake instead of mistake ritual. Again, be super careful at the way that we say things. Make sure you nail it when you say it.
Yep.
But again, I think stories are great. I think tools are more important when you're walking them away, and I think it's okay to point into the PowerPoint with the tools. So James, I think you're on your way. I think it's great that you're getting a chance to practice because you're just getting better each time.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Kelly, can Rubes-Pierre add one other thing?
Yes.
Hey, James, I mentioned to you last time that I just think you are the right candidate coming to us in the right region. And I want to repeat that. Kelly and Joe and I and Chris now, we see a lot of trainer candidates, and we're giving you feedback. We're probably overwhelming you with some of this feedback. You are a strong trainer candidate. Okay, you're a strong trainer candidate. So I don't want that to get lost in all this. All this.
No, I appreciate it. No, I always, even when I was a teacher and now even as an AD, feedback is important because it helps you get better. So you can be as harsh as you want to be. I take it, to make myself be better because I want to, I'm representing Positive Coaching Alliance. I don't want to do it the best way possible. So whatever you're going to throw at me, I'm going to take it. So, don't worry about me. I'm a big boy. I can handle it.
All right.
No, I'd agree with that. You're going to be I'm convinced you're going to be a big player in New England where we really need you. And, I'm excited to have you on board. I think that's why the criticism or the assistance is so direct. Because
no. I get it.
You're going to play a great role there.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, guys.
Hey,
Enjoy your holiday.
Yeah, your next step will be the final. So pick another principal of your choice, and you can do it after the holidays. Let me know when you're ready.
Cool. Thank you guys very much. Good luck, Jess.
Good job, James.
Thanks.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Jess, thanks for hanging on for an extra 15 minutes. Appreciate that.
No problem. I've got my peanut gallery over here. They're going to be my audience as well.
Oh, you actually have people there?
I do.
Oh.
Hey, hi, Jess.
I've got her and then one of my other colleagues. So they're going to kind of listen in and be my live audience.
I love
What a great way
it.
to do it.
I know. That's fantastic.
It helps having someone virtually to hold you accountable, but then also in person, to make sure that you're on point.
I think it's great. Do you need me to pull up the PowerPoint or do you have it there?
I've got it.
Okay, perfect. And you're going to do the intro?
The elm tree, right?
Oh, elm tree. Okay, yep, that's fine. Yep.
Okay, great.
All right, so if you ask a question, you can ask the people that are there with you, or you can ask us. We can all be your...
Perfect. Well, I'll ask you guys, and, Jess kind of knows this, so.
Have you watched Jess of a Live Workshop?
I have a few times, yeah.
Good. That's awesome. All righty. Well, then, Jessica, you can weigh in for feedback, too, at the end.
Jess, you can weigh in for feedback, they said. I've got headphones in, so.
Oh, okay.
So I'm confused. Who's the other Jess?
Oh. I don't know. Ruben, have you met Jessica?
Yes, Perez.
Oh, yeah. Oh, she was on for such a short time. I didn't realize it was Jessica Perez.
I like her
awesome.
hair. It looks
She was at TI. She's a favorite of mine. Hi, Jessica.
Hey, Jessica.
You're a favorite.
Uh-oh. How are you guys
It's
doing?
Joe. Yeah, hi. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Hey, Joe, how are you? It's cold where you are.
It's not bad. It's Chicago.
Listen,
Where I am.
I'm in
It's colder
Palm
where
Beach.
Kelly is.
I'm in Palm Beach. We just did Zoom with someone who's up in Ohio. She's like, "You're making me jealous."
Oh, I know.
Sorry, but it's beautiful.
I actually love winter. It doesn't bother me.
I was just in Toronto, Canada, and it was freezing, so it's really nice to be back in Florida.
Nice.
Well, awesome. Well, I'll let you guys get going. It was good seeing you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jessica.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
It is terrifying. Guys, this is my audience. No, I'm like, okay, you need to practice. Like, if I have a really bad audience, I need to be able to engage you.
That's good.
Okay.
I like that.
All right. Now let's get serious.
So whenever you're ready, we are your audience. You can use the people in the room. Whatever you want to do is fine. If you ask them a question and you want them to answer, that's even better, I think, to have live people there.
Okay.
So feel free to ask any of us.
Okay, so guys, I'm really excited to be here today. My name's Jessica Crate. I'm originally from Canada and grew up around sports all my life. I've played everything from basketball and soccer to before I got into my career as a professional runner. And now I coach with Girls on the Run and I work with girls from grades 3 to 6. And I also am a USA track and field coach. So I've coached athletes from ages 6 to 86. So it's really exciting about what we're going to talk about today. I'm really passionate about this topic topic. Today we're going to cover the elm tree of mastery. And this topic really focuses on peak performance versus just winning. And as an athlete myself, I love this topic because it's based on sports psychology research, 20 years of advanced sports psychology research. So today is an exciting topic, peak performance versus winning. And a lot of you might think, why peak performance versus winning? Aren't they one and the same? But today we're going to cover really what the scoreboard definition is versus the mastery definition. And what I really love about this is the scoreboard definition is concerned with results. And what we call the mastery definition focuses more on effort. And really just effort means how hard am I trying, which is tied to commitment. So effort really is tied to commitment. And really, how committed are your athletes? And as a coach, are you praising your athletes, and do you praise them? So what is that topic covering? So scoreboard definition, let's talk about that. Scoreboard definition is results, comparison with others, and that mistakes are not okay. And although a scoreboard is great to have, the scoreboard really focuses on, with comparison, am I better than them? Is she better than me? Whereas from a mastery perspective, we focus on learning and improvement. So can you guys think of times in your career, coaches, both Jess and you guys virtually, think of times in your career where you've had to go back and forth between scoreboard versus mastery and flip that mindset? So that is a huge component. So think about that scoreboard definition. What is one thing that you guys have learned in your career that resonates with one of those? So scoreboard versus mastery.
I think focusing on the scoreboard is great when you're winning.
Right.
When my team's not winning, or when I've played and I haven't been winning, that's when I think the scoreboard can really be a demotivator, which is tough. So as a coach, I think it's been hard when you're not winning, because the kids you're still being successful and you're still playing well, and you've got to still stay motivated when they're getting crushed. It's not even the end of the first half yet, and they're already down by 6 points. How do you motivate them to come back in the second half and play hard?
100%. So this is a great example for all of us coaches, that no matter what, if you're winning or if you're losing, what a mastery definition really brings to the forefront is focusing on teaching. How do you evaluate, and what kind of things can you look at to evaluate your effectiveness? So really just what is that learning modality, right? So finally, let's talk about the issue of mistakes. In a scoreboard environment, mistakes are not okay. And that's frustrating for a lot of our athletes. I know for the girls that I coach in running, if they're not like winning the 5K, which isn't really our goal, but if they're not doing well and they're making mistakes and they're, failing, if that's a really bad environment, it's not conducive to them learning. So in a mastery environment, we really focus on being okay. So, mistakes are an okay thing to have happen. And that sounds crazy, but let's talk about this. So when athletes perform, what do you think they fear the most?
Making mistakes, screwing up.
Yeah.
Disappointing their parents.
No, that's a big one. That's a big one, especially for the younger athletes. So, well, a few may say that losing or getting hurt or failing, the majority of this is just, messing up, and messing up is a big deal. So why do you think that is? Why do you think it is that people are scared maybe of failing, Ruben, or that they're afraid of not pleasing their parents, Kelly?
Well, afraid of failing and making mistakes because of the way people react to them. The coach might frown, be disappointed, might slam down their scoreboard, might yell and scream.
Right.
Their friends that are watching the game, might. We tend to express disappointment when we see our team, our players make mistakes.
Right. The fear of being punished, probably, like the end result, like if I do make a mistake, what could happen to me? And so really what we're discussing here, and what the goal of PCA is, to say that we're not here to just correct your mistakes and not punish you. We're here to teach you through this and have this learning curve happen. So let's dive into this and really what research shows. And we're going to just talk about more peak performance, having that fear of failure being erased. And when we are able to remove that barrier, the stress, the anxiety, the worry of screwing up and messing up in sports, really just doesn't have to happen. And that's really key in life. So I love that we're implementing this with our athletes and with the students, because it's going to reflect long-term in their lives. So this is just a huge component. So this piece of, research showing that in a mastery climate versus a scoreboard climate, anxiety is going down and your self-confidence is going up no matter what's happening, because really your effort is more important than just winning. Yes, we do want to win, but the effort is so key. And this is supported by 25 years of research, including work done by Robert Rozier of Stanford University. And Stanford is a prestigious school. They have produced an incredible sports team. So by understanding this hand in hand, this dance between, supporting effort and winning is really key to keep that anxiety down with your athletes, that stress down, helping their self-confidence, their self-improvement, really just driving that is absolutely strategic when we're coaching as coaches. So let's talk about this. You as coaches, think about this in your place of work, wherever you are in life, as well as when you're working with your athletes. The elm tree of mastery is key. Mastery gives players a feeling and a sense of total control of not only themselves, regardless of their environment, but they're going to start to work harder and they're going to stick to it way longer. It really helps them put their focus on the things that they can control in their own place of competition. So for me as an athlete, as a runner, that's what I love about running is there's no, judge outside, like when I was in gymnastics, there's no judge saying, oh, she didn't do the backflip, perfectly, and we're going to give her an 8 out of 10. Well, that's what I love about running is that I can control, if I cross the finish line first, I know I crossed the finish line first, right? And I can control that environment. So let's put that into play here, because control is a key point. We have so much more control over mastery winning than just scoreboard winning, and kids will be more confident and really less anxious in this environment. So let's dive into this. We know that the research done by an individual named Albert Bandura says that everything else being equal, a child with higher self-confidence works harder, sticks to the task longer, and the further reason to be mastery oriented as a coach is really the bottom line. So we're going to dive into that in the next scenario, but this principle is really just for coaches so that their athletes will pursue mastery to get better results, more so than the coaches who are just focused on that scoreboard definition. So let's dive into it. Here's a great scenario we're going to talk about, and this one is tentative play. So audience, get excited, because we're going to pair up and, say for example, pair up, grab a partner, you two over there, team up. We're going to do a little group share. So what if your team is playing tentatively? What if your team tends to play tentatively and lets the opponent drive the action? What can you do? Let's talk amongst yourselves and figure out a solution. So if your team is playing tentatively, your opponent's driving the whole game, what can you do as a coach? They're doing great over here. Awesome. Okay.
Are they talking amongst each other over there?
They are, with wigs and helmets on. Okay, so here's some key takeaways. Awesome. I love the dialogue that's going on. You guys are fantastic. So here's some key takeaways that we want to really bring forward with PCA. And this part of this scenario is focusing on effort, and that's key to performance. So being assertive, aggressive play comes when there's no fear of mistake. So if your players are fearing the fact that they're going to make a mistake and the opponents are driving the action, if that fear is gone and they're like, man, we're going to focus on how good we can show up right here and be present in this. Players who are not afraid to make mistakes, they're going to be freed up and they'll play more aggressively. They'll work harder together and they'll be able to reduce that anxiety and stress. And then they're just having more fun. And really the goal of the game is to be there and enjoy the game and put forward your best effort so that you'll play more aggressively, you'll have more fun doing it, and you'll have a better team environment because the players are now working together and they're more focused on what they're doing. So let's take a look at some of the tools that really make the Elm Tree of Mastery come to life in our coaching, because this is the goal, right? We want to really just showcase how we can look at, being a noticer of effort. And we talked about this earlier, how important taking note of the effort is, so that our athletes understand how much we as coaches value their effort. So one of those related tools is reward effort. And this is key, especially unsuccessful effort And that sounds kind of crazy, rewarding unsuccessful effort. Why would we do that? But let's take a look at this and talk about maximizing effort by rewarding unsuccessful effort. So how does the player get rewarded when she makes a successful play? So for you guys, what do you typically do when a player is having a successful game and they're doing a great job?
You tell them. You tell them,
Right.
you cheer for them, you high five them, you tell them, keep going, keep doing what you're doing.
100%. Yeah. So having that self-satisfaction is so key, Kelly, and that accomplishment, praise from your coach, your teammates, cheering of the sidelines and the spectators is fantastic. And there are built-in rewards for that, drives up your dopamine, your serotonin levels, you're feeling great, you got that energy. But what happens when that player makes a great effort, but they don't do a good job? They don't make the play, they don't score the goal. How can we as coaches give genuine praise for that effort? What do you guys think? What do you typically do with your athletes if they're putting forth and they've practiced over and over, they implement that play, but they don't achieve the results that you wanted? How do you reward just them producing an effort?
Well, I would say by picking out the part that they did do well. And it might have been their preparation, it might have been their stance, it might have been their follow through. It might have been the right choice. They took the right shot. It just didn't go in. But picking out things that were done correctly. That the effort, it was actually the right thing to do.
I love that. That's so key, Ruben, because being genuine and authentic as a coach is 100% the reason what we want to do is so key, because if you're not coming across as authentic, the players are going to feel that. So really giving genuine praise, and that will allow your players to maximize their effort and, helping them to fail forward, right? Failing forward is key to understand and learn from their mistakes, or learn from that effort and how they can do better. So I love that. Being genuine is key. Let's dive into the next one. Some of the mistake ritual. Mistakes can be like a time machine. And I love this piece. And I was thinking about this myself as a coach. The mistake ritual really is key. So keeping an athlete's focus on something that's already happened instead of the most important play is very key, just in terms of staying focused in where you are right now, being here now, being present. So what's the most important play? Always the next one, right? A mistake ritual, so it's a gesture phase that coaches and players can use to really remind themselves that mistakes are okay. Communicate that they're moving on to the next play so they can understand where they are in that mistake and be able to rebound from that. So there's some examples that we can dive into. And the first one is flush it. There's another one called no sweat, and then brush it off. So we're going to dive into this and watch how these are implemented with this next player. So let's watch this video. We're going to watch Curtis Granderson's video here, and let's dive into it. Do you guys want me to play this or just kind of jump through it?
Have you seen it? If you've seen it and you're familiar with it, you can keep going. We've seen it.
Okay. So I love this video because this is all about the flush mistake ritual. And as you saw in the video, Curtis is an amazing player, right? But he didn't quite do what he was supposed to. And so this is a great example of how even the most incredible high-level athletes use these mistake rituals just to help them play well. So flush it down, allow yourself to just move forward. Don't hold on to that mistake, and rebound and move on to the next phase. And that's what he did. So flush that mistake down, move on to the next phase. Don't let it hold you down, but use that to propel you to the next level, to the next play, and to be able to continue to be and perform at that level that you can. So that's it. And I love this piece because PCA's coaching model really just involves talking about, the key takeaways of this. And, oops, sorry guys, I just broke my slide up. But PCA's coaching model really takes us into sorry, my slide keeps popping around. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Guys, technical difficulties. You can't live without it. You can't live without technology. So let's wrap up. What we're going to wrap up with is really why this coaching model and the Elm Tree of Mastery. So effort, learning, and mistakes. So focus on the mastery definitions of those as a coach, and bring that forward to really give your players and your team a framework to work from and continue to better each other. So hold each other accountable and think about those tools as you're implementing that in your coaching techniques. So thanks guys for joining us today. It's been an honor and a privilege to have you on here. Thanks for taking time, and I look forward to hearing how you implemented this down in the future.
All right. Thanks. Are you getting applause from your crazy people in the room?
I am. That was a really good challenge, by the way. I don't know if you've ever had people have a live audience, but this is kind of fun.
Sorry for actually when the Portland office the last couple of days has been doing their demos in the office, and so they have me by computer, and then they have people in the office as well. So I think you handled it well without being distracted. That was great. How did you feel? That was your first time going through it.
Yeah. All right. Hit me.
How did you feel going through that for the first time?
Good. You know, I like what I think someone said this to James, just when you're trying to follow slides, like I was like, do I use the slides or not? And that's where I was trying to figure out, like, because I can use them without the slides, but when you use slides, you're kind of like looking at it. So trying not to use the slides. And then at the end, I just want to make sure I was ending on the right note, and then I lost my slides. So I think it was good. I love this principle and this whole concept. So it was simple for me to go through. It's not easy, but it's simple to go through because you can relate to it. But it felt good.
Good. And just one thing to add, this is not your fault. I should have been more clear. Just to let you know that the 2 slides that come before that says Elm Tree of Mastery Principle 1, that's actually a lead-in to this Elm Tree of Mastery. So that's a good transition from Emotional Tank over to Elm Tree of Mastery. So the slide that has the Carol Dweck video praising effort over talent.
Yep.
And then the next slide, I should have told James this also, which I didn't. And then a meaningful athlete experience. How can you believe athletes can get better? Because this concept, this principle of mastery is about performance. How do we increase the athlete's performance? So that's kind of the springboard that can launch you into this principle instead of just starting off with like, this is mastery. Just to let you know for the future.
Got it. Okay, no, that makes so much more sense. And I totally forgot about that. Okay, great. I made a note on it. So then I know to start at 37 and then dive into the next one. Okay, got it.
Right. I mean, when you do it for a workshop, you're going to be doing the entire thing. So you'll know that. Right. But I'm just letting you know that's the setup for this principle.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So Joe and Ruben, I would love to hear you guys first. If this was Jessica's first workshop that you were at, what did you like about what she did? What were some strengths? What was something you connected with really well? And then do you have any suggestions for Jessica moving forward?
Sure. First of all, it was remarkably strong. I'd send you out tomorrow, or pretty close to it. But the one thing I wanted to point out that I really particularly appreciated, because I try hard to do this, and sometimes I succeed better than others, is you really used people's names effectively and remembered what they had specifically said, which I think is just such a great way of honoring their expertise and involving them as true participants. I think sometimes, we do question people in workshops, but we don't really value their answers. And I think showing that you remembered their names and what they said shows that great value. The one thing I would watch, and it's a tricky one for me because it's a note that I consistently get about my own workshops, is you talk very fast. And I would just be aware of that, and be aware that sometimes you can use the pace of your speech along with your volume and your pitch as a differentiator to help people not become sort of ear tired of just the pace of how fast you talk.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I do the same thing. So I definitely understand how tricky it is to modulate that.
Yes, we have a support group called Fast Talkers of PCA, and I thought I was the president. But now apparently Joe is. So you can join the group.
Awesome. Well, I definitely can work on that in life as well. I just remember keeping Ruben on for a little too long on my first webinar. So I'm like, let me make sure that I don't go overtime this time.
Yeah, but it's something that Joe, just to piggyback on what you said, it's something that I've learned over the last many years of doing this, to pace of my voice slowly as emphasis. Rather than some people speed up
laughing in the background because she's so good at keeping like a good pace, and I talk really fast.
Well, it's
so we speak together.
Awesome, whatever's going on.
balance us out.
Yeah.
So I would definitely
naturally-
think of all of the things that you can do with your voice, not just tempo and speed, that allow you to paint things with emphasis. So, pitch, volume, speed, tone, the direct. There's a lot of tools you have. Speaking fast is not the end of the world, but you can get into a pattern where it's the only speed at which you're speaking,
Right.
which certainly limits your ability to provide that emphasis.
Right. Awesome. That's a really good point, Joe. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Ruben?
Yeah, I thought it was very strong. Also, Jessica, very much enjoyed it. Gosh, I thought your self intro. I don't know. I wrote down it was an enthusiastic self intro, enthusiastic, but not egotistical, or it was nice. And then throughout, you show your personality. You have a very expressive face, your eyes, your smile, you're very expressive and engaging with it. I wrote down pleasant, professional, exudes positivity. It's just the feeling I got. So two possible things to think about. You threw out the question, how committed are your athletes? What age and level of athletes do you typically work with, Jessica?
So I currently work with all levels.
How young?
6.
Okay. So
Okay.
the idea of getting coaches to think about how committed are your athletes. I throw it out as, I think depending on who you're in front of, it may be more or less appropriate.
Right.
So I'm going to do what Joe doesn't want me to do, is ask a question that you can answer. You might be wrong, or you might not give me the answer I'm looking for, which is, as a coach, do you expect your athletes to be as committed and passionate about the sport as you are?
I think for that, every athlete's different, and you have to have no expectation, but guide them to where you believe they can be, or where they really should be, but not making that, jump to say, you're not as committed as me, this is not going to work, or expecting them to be 100% committed to the game when really they're just there for a different reason.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jessica. In my coaching, I'm old, right? So I've coached a long time, and in my coaching, I'd say 90% of the athletes weren't as serious, as into it, as committed, as dedicated as I was. For one thing, they weren't making a living on it like the way I was. Right. So the idea of anyway, I'm not going to go any further. I think what my caution there about. Read
the audience for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And then the other one, because I don't want to take up more time. Hey Joe, here we go, Joe. I'm gonna do something you don't like me to do. I know
you didn't last time either, but you can keep saying that if you need.
No, I'm the boss. I can do what I want.
Oh, you are? No, I'm aware.
It's just awesome.
I love it.
It is great, Jessica, being the boss.
I'm fully entertained. This is great.
Well, you started it with Jessica and whoever else you got there. So, Joe, if there was one part of the PowerPoint that you would say is actually designed to be read as is, what part might that be? Kelly, you can think about it too. Anybody want to take a stab at what
you're clearly looking for something specific, and I'm not sure what. I would certainly refer to the quotes as one of those things that needs to be as is.
So that's actually one that I wasn't thinking of. But yeah, if there's a quote there, if you're gonna share the quote, that's the quote, And if I don't think you put the quote into your own words and attribute it, and you might only read half the quote, so I actually wasn't thinking about that. That's a good one. Kelly, do you want to take a stab at where I might be going with this?
I was going to say the toolkit. That's the one that I like.
Okay. Actually, what I had in mind is the scenario. When we put a scenario onto a slide, we have hashed it out. We've thought about it. We've wordsmithed. We've decided, do we want this word? Do we want that word? And, you know, we think that this is the best way to concisely, crisply give the participants a scenario. Go talk about it. So long-winded way of saying, I would consider on the scenarios, if you read the scenario to the group or you have a participant read the scenario, read it just as it is on the slide and not paraphrase it. Jessica, you look like you're not quite understanding.
I'm just looking at the slide. Is it the tentative play one?
Yes. I believe you kind of paraphrase that and put it into your own words. And it was the same scenario. It was the same scenario, but I would.
Nope, we just lost her. See, you scared her away.
I scared her off. So what I might do, because that was my feedback, and you guys can, if you guys don't think that's helpful to Jessica, you could tell her to ignore what Ruben said.
I didn't notice that she did it. I was following along with PowerPoint, but I didn't notice that she did that.
I thought she was paraphrasing. So anyway,
Sorry, guys.
Okay.
I hung up. I didn't want to hear your
That's what I said. He just scared you away.
So Jessica, you know, there's always a challenge with time in these workshops.
Right.
And that's actually one place where you can save a little time is
Okay.
read the scenario just like it is. Okay, ready, go.
Got it.
You know, don't add, don't explain. You know, it's Kelly, I'm going to jump on that next meeting so that, you know, Courtney's not waiting for us. And then you and Joe can just join us whenever you're done.
I don't think Courtney's on, Ruben. Check your email. I thought she sent an email saying that she could only stay for the first 5 minutes of the call. So I think you might be okay.
Okay, then I'll stay on with you guys.
Double check your email, but I think that's what she said.
Okay.
Jessica, I agree with Joe and Ruben. I think this was really strong. Right off the bat, I always do first impressions if I were sitting in your workshop. And I think your expression, energy, and positivity, which is awesome at a Positive Coaching Alliance workshop. And I don't take that for granted. I've had some people that have gone to do workshops and they don't smile. And you're like, wait, this is the Positive Coaching Alliance and there's not a smile on their face. So I think it is really, really important. That being said, I think that is a good tool you can use. As I said, you are an upbeat, positive, smiley, happy person workshop where you're going to need to get serious and you're going to need to slow down and you're going to need to change your facial expressions to be serious when you're talking about a coach that's had a really lasting negative impact on you, or, you know, something where you can draw them in so that they do take you like, man, this woman means business. Like, she is fun and happy and positive, but she also, there is serious things to talk about. So I think that's a tool that you have to be able to use at your workshops to really, you know, bring it. It's almost like, it's like acting. I mean, you really are bringing them in and you're pulling in the emotion and the connection. Also wrote down that you use names really well. I think that's great. It's also fun before a workshop if you have 10 minutes while people are coming in to get to know a few names, because then you can, you know, then the other people in the group are like, wow, she knows people here already. That's pretty cool. So I thought that was really great too. The one, couple little tweaks, when you talked about the scoreboard definition versus the mastery definition, make sure that the coaches know what you're defining. So if you're talking about the definition, what would you say it's the definition of?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you.
Oh, so the definition of what the Elm Tree of Mastery is.
Well, what is it? Because you said, oh, yeah, we're gonna compare the scoreboard definition versus the mastery definition.
Oh, so the scoreboard definition, results, comparison with others.
Right.
Mistakes are.
But what are we actually defining? Do you know? Now I'm asking you questions. Yeah, we're actually defining how they look at success. So
yeah.
Say that their team is successful. Are they basing the success just on the scoreboard, the comparison result, you know, and mistakes are not okay, or do they look at success through mastery?
Right,
so
and that's where I didn't lead into it the right way, so it didn't really flow. My mistake.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I'm just pointing that out because you're not the only one that does it. A lot of people do that, and I think it's just a little tiny subtle difference. But what we're talking about is success. That's just what we do naturally.
Right.
Success just based on what the scoreboard says, you're missing out on a huge opportunity that sports can teach you through learning and through the mistakes. And you did use, I love the way you said, use the mistake to propel you onto the next play. I thought that was a great quote. I thought that was really a strong way to put it, as using mistakes, not just to learn from them, but actually to help springboard you onto the next thing that's going on. The other thing, when you said mistakes are okay, that's controversial sometimes. So in a workshop, that's almost a good place to kind of say, well, how do you feel about that? You know, what kind, and we do have a whole workshop that we do now on mastery, tease out what mistakes are okay, what mistakes are not okay. So I bring a little touch of that into this workshop, because if you just get up there and say, oh, mistakes are okay, on the back of the room that are like, not on my team, they're not. If I just taught you how to do this, you're not going to go and do it wrong. And I'm not going to say, oh, it's okay, buddy. Even though I taught you this, you know, you're doing it the wrong way. So sometimes I just like to be real with people and tease it out a little bit that mistakes are okay. It means that we want to encourage mistakes. We want to encourage the kids to try some aggressive new move. And if they make a mistake doing it, that's okay. It's better than not trying at all. So just to stretch it out a little bit more. Let me see. Oh, you're a very verbal person, which is great. I would also challenge you to keep things a little bit more simple in your explanations. So sometimes simplicity, again, has a great impact. And I think because you've got so much emotion and you've got energy and all that, to keep it an explanation simple would be great. I would like to hear from you a little bit. I would love to hear a story element come in. I'd like to hear about a player that has struggled or potential that wasn't working hard, or maybe something from your own experience. Maybe you had a coach that just didn't motivate you the right way. A story from you, or you bringing out a story from the coaches, some kind of a story that we're telling you, and build upon that story. So take us to a place. People remember stories. So ask someone in the group or have one in your pocket to be able to use, to be able to tease out some of the mastery versus scoreboard focus that can really be detrimental to performance, because this principle is all about how do we get the athletes to perform. Bottom line, we all want our athletes to perform. Maybe we're actually doing things to demotivate our athletes when we really could be doing things better. Giving, you know, I just saw a coach at basketball last night. I was up picking up my daughter from swimming, and he said, if you make the last foul shot, you can go home. If you miss the last foul shot, you have to stay. And it was like, boom, you know, cheering, everybody that made it. And I see coaches do that all the time. And I'm sitting there going, wow, it's just scoreboard. That's all it is. You know, and these poor kids had to stay and wait until, you know, they finally made that foul shot to be able to go home. So just things like that. That's all that I have. I think you did a great job, and I'm excited to see your next demo of a different principle, to see how you use that. Can you hear me? You're frozen here. Am I frozen to everybody? Did I freeze?
I can hear you fine, Kelly. No,
okay.
I got you.
Okay, Jessica's frozen. I don't know if she can hear me. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Jess, very strong. I'm excited for you to be on board. I will send you this recording so that you can watch all the comments. And we will touch base after the holidays, and you can let me know what principle you'd like to do next. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Should the three of us just stay on this?
That's what I was thinking.
If we're the next call?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Well, I mean, I don't want to stay on if I don't know if Jessica's here, actually.
There we
go. She's not.
I just ejected her.
I
have the power to eject people.
You do.